This is TWiT.
There have been a lot of what I'll call WTF moments in this process.
This
and I
one's
got to
for
say,
sure.
This is definitely the biggest one. And the reason is every indication was that the UK was going to just greenlight this acquisition.
Yeah, they already said yes.
That's what makes sense. Yep. No one has ever, of all the issues that anybody, Sony has ever raised, nobody has ever really raised the specter of cloud streaming, right? It's always been Call of Duty, Call of Duty, Call of Duty. And then Microsoft has said, hey guys, it's not about Call of Duty. It's about mobile gaming, mobile gaming. And then the UK said, nope, it's about cloud streaming, this market that doesn't even exist. But we're worried about it because, that market leader, who's not from the UK, by the way, doesn't have a cloud gaming kind of solution yet. So why don't we just see what? The
worst thing was their tweet in which they announced this. The UK CMA, Competition and Markets Authority, had a PlayStation reversed, but still clearly identifiable PlayStation controller in it. It's like, oh, I get it. Okay.
I don't. I'm just confused by it. It's like walking around the corner getting hit in the face with a 2x4. You just don't see it coming. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
So what happened initially was they said there was plenty of competition in the console market. So no problem.
Nowhere's there.
But then they somehow decided that, the cloud gaming market is its entirely different market, unrelated. And in that case, Microsoft is a leader, a dominant leader. Because Sony got out of the business. Sony had Gaikai. Sony had.
Okay, just listen. Because I write about Microsoft, it's an unhappy truth that the term antitrust comes up a lot. I've had to research this. I look into it a lot. I understand what the differences are between different jurisdictions and whatnot. And I got to tell you, one of the foundational truths of antitrust when it comes to monopolies and market power and abuse is that there has to be a market to be impacted for this thing to even be a discussion.
Yeah.
There is no market for cloud gaming right now. It's nothing. It's the tiniest thing in the world. And I'll just tell you from kind of a practical standpoint, having actually used it, unlike apparently any regulator from the UK, that it's not going to replace consoles anytime soon, if ever. And the reason is, it's not like, in other words, like we go from one thing to another in a lot of markets. The truth is gaming has just expanded to include lots of device types. The biggest part of the gaming market is mobile, casual games, things that I don't care about personally. That's the big stuff. Wordle has a more of a monopoly than Microsoft does, So, right? I mean, there's more people playing Wordle ever. I'm just saying.
And then you get into the whole Sherman Act and it has to be doing harm to consumers.
Well, but this is the UK, and so I don't know what their rules are. But
you could look at it from the right there. Yeah, the UK, the Florida of Europe has decided that.
That's harsh.
I know. I'm sorry.
That's really harsh. I don't know.
I'm sorry. So, yeah, no,
you don't really hear them say UK man, glues himself to the toilet.
Give him some time there.
Okay,
all
right.
We'll say. So, look, I guess whether you're trying to protect competition, which is what is typically the case in Europe anyway, or if you're trying to protect consumers, which is typically the case antitrust in the United States, there is no harm here. Like there is nothing to protect. This market is wide open. If you were going to make a bet on the future, you could make a good case for Sony, the dominant company of consoles, having a pretty big play in cloud streaming. You could also make a pretty big case that a company like Google, which failed, could do a pretty good job of this because they have the cloud computing part of it. Microsoft does too. Amazon does too. Help me again, but is Amazon Luna dominating anything right now? No. A company like Apple or again, Google that has a big mobile play could have some kind of an impact in this market. Nobody knows. This is all speculation because this market doesn't really exist. It's not important. So I don't mind there are arguments to be made about things that are true. Microsoft does do this. I don't like arguments that are like Microsoft might do something, right? Or this market might turn into something. Yeah, it might, but we all have ideas. I mean, there's no guarantee in a market this nascent that anything is going to happen. That is a silly reason to deny this acquisition. There are reasons to argue this point, right? There's a debate to be had, absolutely. Not with this, not this part.
Well, and they're basically saying like the only remedy is not to merge. That we would have to regulate otherwise.
Wow,
they're not even leaving the core. They're not even really leaving room for negotiation.
Well, the funny
can
part
they
about
stop
that,
this? Can they do it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, unless you don't want to do business in the UK, right? Yeah. I mean, that would be the
right way to do it. Say, hey, you don't want Call of Duty, you don't need Call of Duty.
Yes. So, if we go back in time about 20 years, this was the argument that a lot of Microsoft enthusiasts were making about the EU. Screw these guys. If they can't figure it out, we just don't sell stuff in the EU. What? This is like it's one of the biggest markets in the world. But unfortunately, for the UK, they decided being part of that market was dumb, and they just drifted off on their own like an island. And now they're their own thing. And honestly, could you make a case for like, all right, we just won't do business there? I mean,
but what if they said, if you don't give us Call of Duty, we may give you any whiskey?
Yeah, sure.
That could be problematic.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's
they don't have a lot of leverage in this. I think.
No, they really don't. It does, but you know what? I don't even want to get into that. That's not.
Microsoft.
I don't think it's not good business to exclude a market.
Yeah, but this is such a big deal, and if it's only the UK, well, we'll have to wait and see what the US does. But if it's the only UK that blocks it, what do you do? Do you say, okay, never mind?
The EU hasn't finalized either. Right. But if the EU falls in and says, okay,
that's different. Yeah,
I mean, I almost wonder if the UK is just taking a flyer here to see if anybody's going to join them.
But the argument doesn't make any sense. In other words, like, the complaint I had about the arguments we've seen so far from the United States, especially, but also from the EU, has been, you're taking Sony's stance. I don't understand why you're backing this company. You're just taking their side. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like I said, I think there's a debate to be had for sure. And I think there are we've talked about this, very logical things Microsoft can do to answer any antitrust concerns around guarantees, around providing games and rival platforms, et cetera, et cetera. Every one of those applies to this imagined world in which cloud gaming or cloud streaming, whatever you want to call it, becomes some major market. You just ensure that the same guarantees exist. We will release Call of Duty on the Sony PlayStation of whatever stripe for the next 10 years, and anything that Sony releases as kind of if we put it on Xbox Game Pass or cloud gaming, we will put it on whatever Sony's cloud gaming thing is called. We'll do that. And Microsoft would agree to that right now.
But that doesn't sound like the UK is allowing for that. It sounds like.
Okay, well, they're
saying, this is just the way it is. It's either you can't do it. Now, by the way, I should point out, didn't the EU already give it a green light? I think it did. So we're waiting on the US, the FTC.
No, the EU has not.
Oh, yet. I thought they did.
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that would be a thing you could do.
But look, if some regulatory body was to make a good argument about this and get some good concession out of Microsoft, you would expect others to look at that and say, hey, you know what? This makes sense. We're going to do this here as well. What the UK just announced doesn't make sense. No one is going to look at that and say, maybe they're onto something. Maybe they have a Minority Report machine and they know what's the future crimes that Microsoft's going to commit. And we should stop that before it happens. We'll send Tom Cruise in.
Well, their concern was there might be need for additional regulation. I'm like, aren't you bureaucrats? Isn't that what you do for a living? Why would you be avoiding that?
Right. It's just if they had come out and said, look, we're really concerned about Call of Duty and we don't think that what Microsoft conceded was enough, I would completely disagree, but at least it wouldn't have come out of left field.
Yeah. Actually, and it's negotiable, right? You lead with a negotiation.
This was like, we're almost 18 months into this, right? So, 15 months-ish, I think we have made the same complaint again and again and again and again and again and again. And now here's the decision. Oh, it's something else we've never discussed.
Right.
Wait, what?
No,
this is how my mother used to argue. What is this? This is crazy.
Well, it smacks of bad faith, right? Like that's really what it is when it's like, oh, we lost that argument, so I'll make a new one.
Yeah, Lisa calls it retrading,
yes,
or relitigating, and it's really a bad form, frankly, to do that.
Yep.
You want to retrade the deal. You've already made a deal.
Yep.
But what? All right, let's. It's kind of my job to raise straw men here.
Sure.
What if let's say UK's presumption, which is that the cloud gaming market is a separate market, and they clearly think that, then it does make sense, right? Because Microsoft, as small as that market is, blah blah blah, does dominate it, doesn't it?
No,
Wordle does.
No, they don't.
It's the Wordle that they should go after.
Yeah,
but is Wordle cloud gaming? I guess it is.
No, it isn't. I'm sorry. My Wordle joke was that Wordle is a casual game that's typically played on mobile. It's part of a much bigger market.
Cloud. What is cloud gaming?
Cloud gaming is cloud streaming, right? So in other words, you have a controller, and maybe you're connected to a smart TV, or you could be a PC.
They're not talking about internet gaming particularly, but this idea of a console in the cloud.
Yeah.
But so if Microsoft's dominant there, aren't they? Who else is dominant?
No, but
NVIDIA?
It doesn't matter if they're dominant there. I'm trying to imagine, like, what is dominant?
Nobody is.
Who's dominant in VHS players today?
Right.
Right. Like, what are we talking about?
But I'm just saying the UK regulator clearly thinks that cloud gaming is a market, a nascent market, and wants to protect it for competition.
I don't know what to tell you. There are established players in gaming. I actually just named all of them, but it's, Apple, Google, Tencent, Microsoft.
But cloud gaming.
And Nintendo.
What you just described, consoles in the cloud.
I am describing right now all of the big players, the top 5 or 6 gaming companies in the world, right?
Yeah.
So these are the guys who have the market power, the cash, the resources to enter new markets where gaming might go, right? What's interesting is, and I don't want to go through this whole list, but it's bizarre to me that most of these companies have kind of stayed in their lane, right? Sony and Nintendo both do, and Microsoft actually, do not have big plays in mobile. Nintendo has released a handful of popular mobile games, but they're like, no, I think we're done. They've never gone back and said, hey, we have this rich library of NES and SNES and N64, whatever games from a million years ago that would play beautifully on iPhones and iPads and stuff. They've never even entertained the idea of entering this market for some reason, even though it would bring them untold billions. Like, it would be the simplest thing in the world. They've never done it. Sony like Microsoft has gotten into game services that are kind of not streaming, but cloud-based, right? Xbox Game Pass, PlayStation Now, where you have a library in the cloud.
Well, that's like Steam.
To your device.
I mean,
yep.
Well, Steam is the dominant, but that's not cloud gaming, right?
Steam's not a subscription service,
right?
Where you get a library of games.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay,
right?
so
they're not a
so criterion number 1 is you got to be a subscription service.
No. I'm just describing what these people are doing. What I'm saying is what they're upset about is something that doesn't actually exist. What the market they're concerned about is what used to be Stadia, what is Amazon Luna, what is Xbox Cloud Gaming, which is a perk of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate only, which is $15 a month, by the way. It's not inexpensive. So does Microsoft dominate that market? Oh, and this is what others do. GeForce Now, there are other services, right? I mean, there's others, but those are the kind of the big ones, right? So I mean, I don't know. I mean, do we stop Ford from getting to EVs because they make traditional cars? And what if they dominate that market? Do we, do you stop?
I understand. No, I completely agree with. Don't think I don't agree with your argument, because damn it, I do.
It just doesn't make sense.
But I'm just trying to put myself in the mindset of the UK regulator that clearly said we can, because this is what the whole thing happened was. At first they said, oh, it's not a problem, and then they said, well, but if we separate cloud gaming out, it is, and that's where that's what they're doing.
The problem I have with this is, I was talking to Richard about this before the show. Like, there's no scenario where cloud streaming, gaming over like a cloud stream game takes over for any of these markets that exist today, right? So the big markets today for gaming are mobile/casual.
That's always going to be dominant. I agree with you.
PC and console, right?
You know what I'd point out? Boosteroid, which is one of the few like independent cloud streaming small UK company.
I never heard of them. They're protecting Boosteroid.
Oh, and by the way, Boosteroid came out today and said we completely disagree with this decision and we support Microsoft's acquisition.
No, really? Did they?
Yeah, really. They really did.
Love it.
Yeah, they completely disagree with this. It's not like
Just out of curiosity, does
no
Boosteroid call itself Preparation B?
It's not like they ever went to the government of the country they live in and said, "Hey, could you protect us against this belligerent monopolist?"
Sony asked for it. Yeah, Sony asked for it. We know that, right? Otherwise,
look, my point is only this: Apple, Amazon, Google, Tencent, Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, all have the ability to compete in this market if they want. Most companies are not, and having actually used these services, like I said, unlike most of these people probably, I can tell you we're not ready. This is not taking over. This is not replacing something.
Yeah.
Like, in other words, Microsoft's like, hey, we lost in console. We need to dominate in another market so we can, not worry about that. That market is not cloud gaming. That market is mobile. And they're never going to dominate that market. They're just going to be competitive in it. So in the same way that Windows used to dominate personal computing and is now just a small, not the biggest platform, let's put it that way. Microsoft today is a much bigger company than it ever was, and they're very, very successful, and everything's fine. Microsoft is never going to dominate mobile gaming. They're never going to dominate a market that is big and powerful that is called cloud gaming. That's not going to exist. It's just a perk of this other stuff.
Yeah.
It's just another way
They are well positioned with their Game Pass to ultimately create a subscription model for all games.
That's what I thought.
This gobble up of all of these gaming studios, to me, it always seems like they're trying to fill out Game Pass as wide as they can get it while there's companies to buy.
Yeah. So, but if we, if we understand the history here, the one other reality we need to just remember is that this was Sony's strategy for many, many years. And Microsoft ignored this. Microsoft got rid of game studios, right? It wasn't until fairly recently, and yes, maybe to this shift of like, how can we make Xbox make sense within the context of the new Microsoft under Satya Nadella and cloud computing? We could do this other thing, that they started buying up game studios. So this is really Microsoft responding in many ways to Sony and to a company that has dominated this market for the past, 20 years, whatever it's been. So yeah, Microsoft's a big company. They can afford to buy game studios. So can Sony, by the way, and they have. And we don't have to go down and relitigate the whole thing about exclusive games and blah blah blah. I think everyone understands the issue, but this cloud thing, what are we talking about?
It's a left field move.
Yeah, that's crazy.
This episode of Tech Break is brought to you by ACI Learning. Certificates open doors to entry-level IT positions and promotions for those already in the field. CompTIA courses with IT Pro from ACI Learning make it easy to go from daydreaming about that career in IT to launching it. Visit go.acilearning.com/twit to learn how you can elevate your skills.